We're going to be going through the security and awareness training for 2025. This is the ITEC 7230A mandated training. It's going to cover all of those topics that are included. And if you could throw that slideshow up there for me.
Settings and go to your settings for multiple displays.
So I'm Bob Murphy. I'm the security engineer here at Lois. I'm right on my 2-year anniversary of serving the state of Kansas. Before this, I spent 8 years doing information security in the Army, set up secure tactical voice and data networks. As I said, today we're going to be covering the ITEC 7230A training requirements, which includes passwords, privacy and data handling, physical security, different attacks, acceptable use of your state of Kansas information systems, personal electronic devices and portable electronic media connections to any state of Kansas information systems or networks, and how to report some suspicious activity or abuse. We'll start off with passwords. So 14-character password with a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols will take a brute force attack piece of software about 16 million years to crack. So that kind of gives you an idea of why the state has mandated that passwords be at least 14 characters and must contain an uppercase, lowercase, numeral, non-alphanumeric character, that's an @ $, anything like that, and a minimum of 14 characters. When you are setting those passwords, you have to have 24 different passwords before you can reuse the same password over again. That's the best way to put that. And as of right now, you have to reset that password every 180 days or every 6 months. For best practices for your passwords, we don't want you to write down or save your password on your computer. We do have a password manager app called Bitwarden loaded onto everybody's computer that you can use for password management. Don't ever share your password with anyone. This includes office assistants and committee assistants. If they need to access your account and you don't know how to get them that access without sharing the password, let us know and we can get that set up for you. Don't use in-sequence numbers or repeating numbers, 1234, 2222. Don't include any of your personally identifiable information. This is a big one. A lot of people will use their last name, first name, part of their date of birth, part of their children's date of birth, things like that for passwords, and that's not a good idea because if anybody can Google you, and of course everybody here is easily Googleable, they can find that information and use that to try to guess your password. Also, don't utilize context clues. That's a big one. A lot of people with different websites will say Facebook 2025 or Twitter 2025 or whatever the website may be. So you want to get those context clues out of your passwords. And then you also don't want to reuse your passwords from other accounts. If someone's to find the password from one account and it is reused, that means they have the password to all of your accounts. And they can just essentially do a search for your email addresses, any email addresses associated with you, and enter that password over and over again and see which one of your accounts they can get into. So for privacy and data handling, in 2023, 14% of cybersecurity incidents in North America.
Yeah, did you say that we have to have a minimum of 14 characters in the?
Correct.
My current password's 10. So is this new or?
No, that's been the standard. We'll have to take a look at that because it should be.
All right, thank you.
There may be a security group issue on the back end that we just need to get fixed for that, but we can look into that, Representative. So in 2023, 14% of cybersecurity incidents in North America were caused by negligent or mistaken privacy and data handling procedures. So in Kansas, there are 3 data classifications according to ITEC policy. Public, which would include things like agency policies, expenditure data, and revenue data. Private, which would be your mother and father's names, place of birth, children's names, things like that. And restricted, which would be social security numbers, employee IDs, or bank account numbers. The ones we really want to focus on. Oh, no problem. The ones we really want to focus on here are restricted and private information, which need to be encrypted when stored locally, encrypted when stored on agency-approved portable media or electronic devices. That means on your company-issued phones, if you have them, or thumb drives that the state issues you, things like that. Encrypted when transmitted electronically. This means don't send social security numbers, bank account numbers, or things of that nature over the email system without encrypting them first. Must be protected from unauthorized disclosure. This has to do a lot with printing. So if you're going to print something that has social security numbers, anything like that on it, you want to make sure that you have that collected from the printer immediately. You don't want to leave that sitting around on a printer or anything like that, or sitting around on a desk in an open area. And all of this information, when it's restricted or private, has to be removed, destroyed, or deleted in accordance with the State of Kansas records retention schedules. I'm not going to go over those specifically here because those are very, very complicated. Revisers can give you a good breakdown on that, and I believe Kansas Historical Society can as well. So just some best practices for general privacy and data handling when you're in your offices. Of course, don't access anyone else's restricted or private information without permission. Respect the privacy of peers, coworkers, and office mates. Don't look on other people's screens, take a peek at other people's phones, look at stuff on other people's desks. Keep restricted or private information in a secure workspace, meaning we would prefer that if you have restricted or private use information, unless there's an absolute business need for it to leave the Capitol building, we would want to keep all that information secure in your office, not at home or any place like that where it could get lost or stolen. When it is in your office, you want to store that in a locked drawer in a locked room. And do not store any state of Kansas restricted or private information on personal electronic devices or portable electronic media. Now, this is a piece that will be new. We will have the ability to kind of separate state of Kansas stuff and your regular stuff on your mobile phones if you so permit. But for now, you don't want to store any of that restricted or sensitive information on your phone or any kind of device that you bring in, a thumb drive or anything like that, because it hasn't been scanned. You don't know necessarily what's going to be on there, that viruses you could be introducing into the computer, or even if there's just some kind of spyware on there that's looking at whatever you put onto the thumb drive whenever you hook it up. And also do not send restricted or private information over unencrypted mediums. Again, that's sending social security numbers, bank accounts, things like that over email without encrypting. Physical security, Kansas Senate Bill 172 created the crimes of trespassing on critical infrastructure facility and criminal damage to a critical infrastructure facility. In the instance of the Capitol building, that would be our data center. Well, one of the instances in the Capitol building would be our data center downstairs. This is critical infrastructure for our IT systems. So for general physical security, don't leave your keys, access badges, or sensitive documents out in the open, meaning don't leave them on your desks, don't leave them on the table in the bathrooms when you go to the bathroom. Make sure things like that can allow other people to access your sensitive information and don't have any kind of security of their own are on your person at all times. Don't tailgate when entering the building. Make sure your badge is scanned. This doesn't mean that you can't hold the door open for someone. Just make sure that they also scan their badge when you do hold the door. If they don't, say, excuse me, could you please scan, or however you can politely ask them to do that. Lock your workstation every time you leave your desk. I like to say if you're going to be far enough away from your desk where you can't touch your computer, even if you can see the monitor, it's a good idea to lock it. Just because you never know what's going to happen. You may forget and then walk off, and then your computer's left unattended and unlocked, and that can lead to data loss. Things like that. And lock your doors and drawers when leaving your workspace. This is a big one. We do check our offices every once in a while, just kind of go around and see who's leaving their stuff unlocked, and it happens a lot more than you would think, that there's, information that we can find in desk drawers or things like that. All right, so now we'll talk about cyber attacks. Since 2022, cyber attacks of all types have steadily increased against state and local governments. The most common form of cybercrime is phishing, which is the fraudulent practice of sending communications which claim to be from a trusted source to trick you into revealing personal information. You've all seen by now the Arctic Wolf phishing simulation emails, where they try to get you to go to a fake link that's set up specifically to catch you, essentially a honey trap, to try to get you to click on a link and get you to reveal that personal information. And when you do it in that context, it's going to send you to some remedial training, unlike in real life, which will, a lot of times get you into a bad situation. What's happening a lot now is these phishing attacks are getting a lot more complex. So it used to be where it would ask you specifically for your username and password. Now they're getting put onto things like CAPTCHAs. So I don't, does everyone know what the CAPTCHA is, where it'll say verify that you're human, so you have to select images or things like that. What they're actually doing is they're having malicious code when you interact with that CAPTCHA that's being downloaded onto your machine or onto your computer, or they have in somewhere where when you hit allow on that, it's stealing permissions to be able to look on that computer. Essentially, all they need to do is get on there in some way, shape, or form, and then they can kind of spread from there. So you really have to be careful. You don't want to click on anything you don't know what it is, or visit any links or sites that you're unaware of. If you receive any kind of link or any information via email, text message, anything like that, the best practice is to go ahead and Google that site, and if the link is the same or if the link is valid, you should be able to find anything you need on Google without having to click on the specific link you were given. You can also run a safe search check, which we can do for you down in the, a safe link search, which we can do down in the Lois office for you if you ever have any questions about a link. So phishing uses social engineering, which is basically using interaction between everybody to compromise information about the organization, its users, or information systems. A lot of people will think that even the smallest bit of information doesn't matter, but when you're looking at it in the context of cyber attacks, so say you have an org chart and you send out an org chart, or you give somebody information on the org chart, well, they can go, okay, well, so-and-so's down here, but at the head is up here, so then they know, well, now I need to go find this person, as opposed to they were trying to find this person. So you want to keep the org charts and things like that private. And these attacks really do take big advantage of fear, trust, insecurity, or lack of knowledge. A lot of times, like I said, they'll scare you. I'm sure everybody's gotten a call at some point in time from a debt collector who says you owe $7,000 immediately, or they're going to send the police to your house. I mean, everybody gets those calls. So that's, not everybody falls for those, but some people do. There also, another common one that's still common is pretending to be a family member and saying, oh, mom, dad, brother, sister, grandpa, I need money. Please send money to, send me money on a prepaid debit card, or wire me money here. You want to make sure you verify anything before you take action on it. And again, do not click anything within an email. So the various forms of malware, just so you know, are the main ones you're gonna run into are worm, virus, and a Trojan. Those are kind of the basis of all the other different kind of malware you hear about. The difference between the three is a worm can move around your system by itself. A virus, you have to do something to make it spread. So that's if you got an attachment with the virus and you sent it to somebody else, that would spread the virus. And a Trojan appears to be legitimate software but contains hidden malicious software. You're going to see that likely when you go on the internet and you get a pop-up that says you have 18 viruses on your computer, click here to fix it, things of that nature. Those are going to be Trojans. Always avoid those. And then, of course, this all leads to the big one right now, especially for government organizations, which is ransomware, which is any kind of malware, a worm, virus, or a Trojan that locks all of the data we have in our system, gains access into our system, gets in there, locks everything out so nobody can access something, and then a bad actor says, well, hold on, if you want to access this data, pay me this much money. And that never ends up well, because a lot of times there'll be a backdoor or a time bomb on there, so you'll pay the money, and then 6 months later it's locked again because they kept something on there and then they want more money. So we want to keep that off the system entirely. If you see any suspicious activity or abuse, report it to your immediate supervisor. If you have an idea of your IT incident response plan, anybody in your any required person in your IT incident response plan, you can report it to myself, Bob Murphy at las.ks.gov, or to tech staff at las.ks.gov. Next thing we're going to cover real quick is preventing identity theft. Again, you can't say this enough. Don't click on emails, attachments, or links you weren't expecting to receive. So, of course, if you get a link in an email from someone and then they say, Senator Thompson says, Representative Francis, I'm going to send you a link to this, and you receive it, of course, that's okay to click on because you know it's coming from him and you know it's going to be there. But if you ever get something that you don't recognize, just ignore that link, get rid of it. Practice good password hygiene. This is what we discussed earlier with the making sure the password length and complexity is appropriate. This is also not reusing passwords between sites, not writing your password down. Basically all those password best practices would be good hygiene. You also want to utilize enhanced authentication methods. This is passkeys, multi-factor authentication, hardware tokens, things like that. Be mysterious on social networks. This is another big one. And, being a public and, figures, it's more difficult for you to do, but, speaking mainly to your personal accounts, when you go out of town, don't let people know you're going out of town. If somebody's going to be home alone, don't, let them know somebody in your family, your family. Make sure your kids know that they shouldn't tell people they're home alone. Don't tell people where you're going, where you've been, your specific location, things like that. Because, like I said, any piece of information, you'd be surprised how it can be used to gain access to different things. Shop online with caution. Again, with those CAPTCHA schemes that are going on, and some of these websites, you might see, especially ones with great deals, you might say, oh, this is a great idea. You put in your credit card information, and then boom, they've got that information. So you really want to make sure you are doing some kind of integrity check on the site, Trustpilot, Better Business Bureau, something like that, to make sure that it's a legitimate business. And you're not, again, just giving credit card information to, bad actors who have set up a fake online website, which is for sales, which is very easy to do. Check your bank and credit card statements regularly, always for suspicious charges. Check your credit report at least once a month to make sure you don't have any pulls on your credit or anything like that that you don't recognize. And if someone calls you, insist on pausing that conversation and calling back on a publicly available number if they ask you for personal information. So if you receive a call saying, hey, this is an important business matter, I'm so-and-so from JP Morgan Chase, I want to discuss your bank account, say, excuse me, I need to call you back on, I'm going to call you back on a 1-800 number, what's your extension? And you find the 1-800 number, and if their extension works, they're legitimate. If it doesn't, they were trying to get your information. I mean, they're just little things with schemes that are going on constantly with all these different things that you really want to take care of to prevent identity theft. There are also different identity monitoring services such as LifeLock and things like that. Even the phone carriers now are offering their own identity monitoring services, usually a lot cheaper than like LifeLock. Like T-Mobile has one through McAfee, AT&T has their own, things like that you can, for $5, $10 a month, they will monitor your email addresses, identities, look for your information on the dark web, look to see if any of the passwords that you have been compromised or anything like that. Check for credit pulls, etc. To report identity theft, if you suspect it, you're of course going to want to report that to your local authorities. You're going to want to make sure you contact your banks, financial brokers, family members, friends, mobile carriers, anything like that. Family members and friends is a big one. A lot of people don't think to do that when in a case of identity theft. But if someone has stolen your identity, that means they have all of your information, and it makes it much easier for them to phish your family members or friends now that they have your personal information. So make sure that they know that your identity's been stolen, so they're more suspicious of anything that they may receive from you. Contact the IRS. They have an identity protection website and a number, which I will send out after this. And then you can also file a complaint with the Internet Crime Complaint Center at ks.gov. That's all they do is handle identity theft complaints on various websites. Excuse me. Lastly, we're going to cover the acceptable use of state information systems. We'll start with internet usage. Browse at your own risk when you're on the state information systems because any of your browser activity is logged and can be monitored. Excuse me. These are, state of Kansas public computers, not personal computers. So, when you sign on and you get that big warning banner that, you may or may not read that lets you know that the system can be monitored, it is monitored, and can be, the logs can be looked at any point in time. Try not to use these information systems, state information systems, for personal browsing, meaning your Facebook accounts, Twitter, things like that. We just want to keep them from going anywhere they don't need to go to lessen the chance of attacks happening, essentially attack surface reduction. Email usage, don't use the state email system for campaigning, personal business, personal financial transactions, online betting or gambling, or any other use not explicitly approved by whoever your leadership team is. The email systems are monitored for data leakage, exfiltration, and or unusual activity. What this means is that if you do send bank accounts, social security numbers, things like that through our email system, we do have a form email you will get saying, to verify whether or not you meant to send that information, saying there was an email and our systems detected that a social security number was sent 38 times, for example. We had one recently that somebody had a spreadsheet with 38 people's social security numbers that they sent out. So you'll get that email. We can't see what information was included in the email. We can just see that the data was leaked. Same thing if you offload a large amount of files from your email account or from any of our state information systems, we will get a notification saying so-and-so just, if it's unusual for you to do so, so-and-so just offloaded 2 terabytes of information onto a stored drive. So you want to be careful with that thing as well. And of course, piracy, don't use your state information systems or networks to download music, software, movies, anything like that. You'd be surprised how often we see it. Or do anything that would violate state, federal, local law or infringe upon copyrights. Infringe upon copyrights becomes kind of iffy when you're looking at AI and image generation and things like that. So you want to be really, really careful. It can put the state in a bad spot if something were to happen and somebody were to decide to file a lawsuit against the state because of something that was AI generated or anything like that, and that happened on a state issued laptop. And finally, when we talk about personal portable electronic devices and media, they're not authorized to connect to state of Kansas equipment, so that means hooking up your iPhone to your state computer is not authorized. Hooking up your own thumb drive to your state computer is not authorized. We have thumb drives. We can get larger storage median if you need it, but we have all of that stuff available for you to use. Of course, not phones, but thumb drives and things like that we know are secure. Any personal devices, this means cell phones or personal computers, are not authorized to connect to the secure state of Kansas owned Wi-Fi network. They have to use the KS Open network, which is less secure, but it is open to the public, and we keep the secure network for anything that is state issued or state run. And just to give you an idea of what personal devices and personal media devices include, thumb drives, cell phones, tablets, laptops, anything like that. And again, we do that because we can't put our antivirus software on your computers. We don't have the licenses. It would be very expensive if we had to put antivirus software on everybody's computer, everybody's phone, everything like that. And by ITech requirement, we have to have the ability to monitor via antivirus software everything that's connected to the secure state network. So that's not just something we did on a whim. It's according to state regulation. And I know in years past that hasn't really been enforced, and we've been kind of pushing that enforcement. And I appreciate everybody's cooperation and help with that. At this time, that's everything I needed to cover for the ITech standards. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, and by the way, I think probably at this time I ought to call the meeting to order. I'm afraid we've got a quorum here, and we're going to get beyond what we need to do at that time. So I'll call the meeting to order. Everybody's seen the presentation as much as possible. Does anybody have any questions? Representative Sawyer.
Yeah, you talked about the phishing thing. One, I get a lot of complaints from constituents is they'll take the turnpike and then like 10 or 15 minutes later, they get a fake email, a phishing email telling them they got to pay immediately or they'll lose their license or something like that. It seems like a pretty big problem because I'm getting a lot of those complaints. I don't know if you guys are looking into that or know about that or doing something.
We can work with KDOT on that. That would be, we don't control those emails that go out. I would say, at a state level, what we want to do is just get the information out to whoever we can, and we can look at a way to do this to as many constituents as we can, and probably partnering with KDOT to do this and letting them know that, hey, these are the procedures for what happens. You'll get an email, but you're not going to lose your license if you don't pay right away. This is the official website, this is the official app, things like that. Just, we want to put out information that lets them know the right way to do things. That way they don't just click on the link.
What scares me is how to, I don't know how these phishing people know somebody just took the turnpike. It seems like there's a leak in our security system that.
Representative Peterson, do you want to speak to that? Chairman Peterson, maybe that'd be easier.
Yeah, those texts and emails are going out. The turnpike's not sending them. People are even getting them that don't even use the turnpike. There's thousands of them going out, and they're going out all across the nation for different turnpikes.
Yes.
Several times a day.
And Tom, if you want to send me or Senator Peterson a email on that, and we can get it to the right person, the Turnpike Association would be the one that might be able, but I think there's some kind of geolocation thing where they've got spoofed on that, and yeah, yes. I don't know we can do much.
The chairman's right, that could have happened, or most likely somebody just downloaded a list of every name they could find in Kansas and every email address, and then they cross-referenced that with states that use turnpikes, and then they said, hey, I'm going to send out an email to everyone as often as I can with a thing for the turnpike just in case they used it. And that's generally what will happen. But there is a chance that there could be some kind of system breach. I couldn't comment on that at all because that's a totally separate system from us, so.
Any other questions? And I want to explain to the members of the committee that just showed up while we were on Senate time. We decided that since we put off the IT security awareness training for 2 meetings, that we would go ahead and start to, and I know Bob would be more than happy to sit down and do a meeting with everybody that needs to be done. And I want to thank you also for being patient with us over the last 2 months as we've continued to postpone this.
Of course, no problem, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you guys having me. And any further questions?
Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You all have a great day.
All right, committee, we'll get back to our regularly scheduled agenda with that taken care of. We do want to thank Capital Strategies for lunch. Thank you, Vice Chair, for making sure that we got that taken care of. First item on the agenda today is to select audit proposals, and Kristen will run through those real quickly with us, and we'll all be looking for this kind of summary thing.
Great.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So yes, if you want to turn to tab A in your committee notebook, that's what I'll be working from. There are 2 attachments that you'll see within tab A. So attachment A within tab A includes that summary document that Chairman Francis just mentioned, along with just behind that, you'll see a full copy and fully written out the full proposal. And then at the very end, so last page, you will see a copy of the schedule that we have, which is in labeled as attachment B. So I'm actually just going to...
Can I just, I do want to say one thing. So one of the things that Kristen has mentioned to me is we've got room for about 11 max as far as proposals, and something that I wanted to, I got some information from Chris today. Every proposal costs about $11,000 a person month. So to make it real simple, a 4-month, 3-person audit costs $132,000, very roughly. So I thought that was interesting information. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
And as we discussed, Mr. Chair, that's not an out-of-pocket cost, just making sure you're aware of it. We get an appropriation. That's just a calculated cost.
Right. That's if you divide your budget by however many month hours you do, it's about 11,000. Yeah. Yeah, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand we're choosing 11, I'm sorry. I understand that we're choosing 11 of the major audits, but we have many smaller audits under 100 hours. And I know myself and a few others are, if we only choose 10, would that leave more time for those smaller audits? And I apologize, I should have had mine into the committee, but I ran into some personal items. And, but I think it's very important, a few of these audits that are being proposed.
And I think if the committee decides that we only want to do 7 or 8, because we want to give people time to kind of get some audit proposals together, we might only approve 7 or 8, and then maybe at the next meeting, look at 2 or 3.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to make a motion that we do restrict it to 7 or 8, because I appreciate, and I know everybody else does, this scheduled session. Some are saying it was not compressed, but it was absolutely compressed and intense. And it did not give us the flexibility that we needed in order to propose. But, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it up to your discretion.
I think I'd kind of like for us to go through the whole deal and see where we are on that. Senator Petty, did you have a comment?
I had a question, and I'm just, I guess it's because this is my first time being on post-audit. I noticed as I was looking through here that we have some, of course, that are coming from legislators, but we also have that are coming from staff. And I just wondered, has there been has there been a priority looking at what's coming from legislators as opposed to what's coming from staff or not? I didn't know.
I think that's always at our prerogative, whether we prioritize. I think staff has some excellent ideas about what are good topics, and I think we just have to make that decision as we go through.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. With that, let's go on through.
So I might actually go a little bit out of order here and flip to attachment B first, which is the schedule. And this might help answer some of the questions that you all have raised. So if you look at the schedule, essentially how to read that, those boxes on the left, any of them that are like a darker shaded color, those are audits that we are currently working on, kind of wrapping up most of them. So things like the free lunch, abuse and neglect registries, and transient guest tax are ongoing but should end within the next couple of months. Then you will notice that there are a few, they're the smaller boxes there, there are a lighter shade of blue. Those are the limited scope audits that you all have already approved, so there are 3 of those. There are a few others that are already kind of behind the scenes in the hopper that I'm kind of working toward developing, also limited scopes. And so what you all today are trying to do is pick topics that would help fill in basically that the remaining area that's not shaded in gray and would fill our schedule from now until essentially next spring meeting, which is April of 2026. So a couple other kind of housekeeping items just to help head off any questions. Any proposals that the committee does not select today can be resubmitted by the requester for the next spring meeting, so that we have a kind of a built-in process. I will reach out to do that at the end of the year before the next spring meeting. I would also mention that legislators can at any time bring new audit proposals. They do not have to be limited scopes. They can be full audits. If that happens, essentially the rules are that we would bring that to you all at the next committee meeting. You would take it up then and have basically a decision to make. If you wanted to approve it and you do fill our schedule today, what that means is you would have to bump a different one to make space for it. That'll obviously depend on how you all move forward today. And then if it's one that you don't approve, then the same process would ensue. I would reach out to that person and see if they wanted to resubmit it for the committee's spring meeting in April 2026. And then as we walk through this summary document, this has been pointed out already, you will see these designations. I'm going to talk through them by number, but you will see an L or an E this year. In some years, there's an S. And those basically delineate what is a legislator request. An E is a staff request. And then if there were S's, that would be a statutory request. But thank you to you all. We don't have any of those this year on our schedule. So with that, I will start just walking through this summary table with you all. Again, that's in attachment A. The first, so there's 17 topics overall for you all to consider today. I think 12 of those are legislative topics, and then 5 of them are staff topics. So I'm going to start with legislative requests first with 1L at the top of page 1. That would have us look at the tax credit for low-income student scholarship program. And if you look off to the right, you'll see there's 2 questions that we would be answering through this audit. I'm sorry, I should mention that this audit is being requested by Senator Sykes. So the 2 questions that we would be answering is, have scholarship granting organizations dispersed contributions from that program according to state law? And how much in tax credits have Kansas taxpayers received and used related to the program? Moving on to the second legislative request, it would have us look at the admissions processes for the KU Med School and the K-State Vet School. This is being requested by Senator Thompson. And it would have us answer 1 question, which is, do the admissions policies and processes at those 2 schools create potential preferential treatment for certain applicants? The third legislative request would have us look at the IT security standards and resources of Kansas counties. So this one, a little bit of backstory is, you're seeing that it's requested by the committee. This is something that our IT security team brought up as a potential option for the work that they might do this year. And when we were having that discussion last December, you all directed us to turn those options into proposals. So that is what this proposal and the very next one I'm going to talk about are. So this first one would have us look at, again, Kansas County's IT security standards and resources, and then 4L would have us look at school districts' accounting systems and whether or not they have adequate access controls. Request 5L would have us look at state office space, and that's being requested by Senator Rick Billinger. Would have us answer 2 questions. How much office space is owned or leased by the state, and how is that space being used? And what cost-effective options are available for state agencies to acquire office space in Topeka? Moving to 6L, this would have us look at ks, the Kansas State High School Activities Association, and school district policies for extracurricular activities. This audit is being requested by Senator Erickson. It would answer 2 questions. Do school district and KSHA policies comply with state laws allowing virtual and non-public school students to participate in KSHA-regulated activities? And what policies do school districts have regarding allowing virtual or non-public students to participate in non-KSHA-regulated activities? Request 7L would have us look at the state treasurer's office and the funds that they administer. This is being requested by Representatives Christy Williams and Representative Troy Waymaster. This would have us answer 1 question, which is what funds does the treasurer's office administer? How are they dispersed? And what are their balances? 8L would have us look at the Pregnancy Compassion Awareness Program. This audit is being requested jointly by Representative Nikki McDonald and Senator Pat Petty. It would have us answer 2 questions. Do the Kansas Pregnancy Care Network and its network providers have sufficient processes for monitoring and verifying spending through the program? And does the Kansas Pregnancy Care Network and a sample of its network providers follow their processes for monitoring and verifying spending in 2024? And Chairman Francis, I would mention, I think that Representative McDonald is here, and if you would like, I think she does have comments about her topic.
Would everybody like to let Representative McDonald talk about her proposal now, or do you want to wait and see if it gets a motion to be considered? Excuse me? Wait? Okay. We'll go ahead and wait until there's a motion to consider, and then we'll let Representative McDonald speak about it.
Okay. So I will move on to 9L then, which would have us look at some of the funds that the Children's Cabinet oversees. This is being requested. There's by 3 representatives, Sherry Brantley, Megan Steele, and Don Wolf. It would have us answer 2 questions, have 5 selected programs, which includes I might have to flip to it. Sorry, I didn't put it in here. 5 programs that are funded by the Children's Initiative Fund achieved the Children's Cabinet's performance goals in recent years, and has the Children's Cabinet used the 5 selected programs' performance to make funding or other administrative decisions in recent years? Request 10L would have us look at the costs and obligations to counties to meet state requirements. This is being requested by Representatives Adam Smith and Shannon Francis. It would have us answer 2 questions. How much did counties spend in the most recent year to comply with state requirements for a selection of programs and services? And then what portion of counties' costs to provide those programs and services were covered by state or federal funding or taxpayer fees? Request 11L would have us look at the state fire marshal's office and their inspection requirements. This audit is being requested by Senator Chase Blasey. It would have us answer 4 questions. One of those is, does the fire marshal conduct inspections of residential facilities in alignment with applicable regulations? The second one would be very similar, but instead of looking at residential facilities, it would look at child care facilities. The third question would have us look at how Kansas's process for conducting inspections of residential facilities and child care facilities compare to inspections processes used in other states. And then the fourth question would have us compare those, instead of to other states, to local jurisdictions in Kansas. And then 12L would have us review an aspect of the TANF program. This is being requested by Senator Cindy Holscher. It would have us answer 2 questions. What is DCF's process for verifying applicants' TANF cash assistance eligibility, and how many staff and hours are involved? And then the second question would have us answer how much time applicants typically spend applying for TANF cash assistance. So those are the legislative requests. Now I'm moving into the staff topics for you all to consider. Again, committee rule just requires us to put them in front of you. You don't have to choose them, but they are for your consideration. So the first one would look at the KDAD's nursing facility inspection and follow-up processes. It would have us answer 1 question, which is, has KDAD's completed timely nursing home inspections and appropriately followed up on identified deficiencies? 14E would have us look at, it's a U.S. Department of Transportation administers what's called the Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development Funds program, or BUILD program. And it would have us answer the question, do the state agencies and local governments that oversee the BUILD program, grant program, have sufficient controls over the use of grant funds? 15E would have us look at law enforcement agencies' processes for wiping personal devices of personal information, so before they resell them. So the question that we would answer is, do law enforcement agencies have adequate policies and procedures to prevent personal electronics from being sold while still containing personal data? 16E would have us look at the Department of Corrections and their inmate health care. We would answer 2 questions. Is the Department of Corrections ensuring its contractor provides cost-effective health care services to inmates? And is the Department of Corrections ensuring its contractor provides quality health care services to inmates? And then the last topic for your all's consideration is one that you see repeating from year to year that would have us follow up on old audit recommendations. In this particular one, we would follow up on recommendations from 2023 and 2024 audits, looking at groundwater management districts, election security, rural opportunity zones, and motor vehicle sales and use tax.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Kirsten? Senator Petty.
So I guess it's for Kristen. So Kristen, when I went through these looking at, and I certainly did appreciate receiving this information ahead of time. I am curious, consideration, is there ever any thought about whether we consider audits when it's just dealing with legislation that's just been passed?
I mean, again, I think that's for you all to consider. It's our only role in this is if you all express an interest in drafting an audit proposal, we draft it.
Gotcha. And then the last thing is that the last one that you have listed here, the one on reviewing agencies' implication of selective performance audits. So you're then, on that one, it's looking back at if it was an audit that was done, say on the Department of Corrections, and you're looking back to see whether the Department of Corrections actually did anything with it.
That's correct. So when we have a process, when we have recommendations in our audit reports, we follow up every 6 months with those agencies who self-report whether or not they've implemented the recommendation. And then this is an audit that would actually have us do work to confirm whether or not what the agency told us they did to implement the recommendation actually happened.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up on that, how difficult is it? I know you have selected 3 or 4 areas that you thought would be good ones to go back and basically follow up on. How hard is it for us to change those 4? Maybe we have a different priority. You know, what comes top of my mind is Osawatomie, for instance. I had a real concern with that. I know they're trying to do better, but how difficult is that to change those?
You guys can change whatever you want. My one, I guess, warning on that is, like, for example, using Osawatomie State Hospital, because we just came out with it, there's not much time that has passed for
soon.
them to implement it. So these are more based on how much time has also passed and whether or not the agency has actually indicated that they think they've implemented it.
Senator Tyson.
Osawatomie is a great example, and I've been contacted by employees and former employees again, and they have not seen any changes. In fact, they said it has gotten worse since the audit. And so I think we have a major problem there. In fact, I know we do. I don't even hesitate. We absolutely do.
Any other questions for Kirsten before we get into the selection process? And this is going to be messy, so please bear with me. You know, it's kind of like we're going to have to go through. And I do think Senator Tyson had a great idea. I've heard from a number of people about some potential audit ideas. They just didn't feel like they had a chance to get done. So I don't want to really necessarily hold us to a hard number of 8, but if we get 6 or 7, I think that's good, because as Kirsten mentioned earlier, when you want to come up with one in September, it gets really hard because you got to take somebody else out. And I just think that's a really good thing for us to look at. Senator Petty.
Just as a follow-up on that, I wanted to understand the process. So we have before us 14 that have been submitted by legislators or a group of legislators. And if those are not selected today, then they have to wait for a whole year. But if somebody else brings one forward later, they're actually going to be considered before those that are put off for a whole year. I'm not sure if I followed that.
Kirsten, I think she addressed that, but would you say that?
So, I mean, I think you are following that correctly. So because they're up for consideration today, if you don't choose them, I would follow up at the end of this year to see if they wanted to submit it for next year's consideration. If someone were to bring a proposal idea in September, then I would have that on the agenda for you all to consider whenever you next met. But then the idea is the schedule is already full. So either you all have to think that it's important enough that it's worth bumping another one to make space for it, or it would also be one that would end up on a list for consideration at the next spring meeting, as long as the requester wants to do that.
But didn't you also say that they could refine the scope and bring it back?
Typically, I think maybe the process you're thinking of would be for limited scopes. If there's one that comes up and you all don't approve it, then I would go back to them to refine the scope of that request.
Are you done?
Thank you. So that does clarify. So that actually those that don't come in within the time frame, if the committee decided, they could then be put in place above those that would have already submitted in a timely manner, and were then, if they wanted to submit again, were postponed for a whole year. Is that correct? Is that what I hear?
They would have to, you all would have to, because the schedule would be full, you all would have to make space for it if it was going to bump anything else in line. Otherwise, it would end up in the same queue as the others for this April 2026 spring meeting.
Thank you.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you. I'll defer to Representative Williams, but very quickly, we just talked about not filling the queue, so there would be room. That is not inaccurate. Under normal circumstances, if we would choose all of the 11, that would be the case. But we're talking about not filling the queue today.
Yeah.
So that is the difference.
And also, we do need to fill the queue probably as soon as we can so that they can plan their workflow for the rest of the year. Representative Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree 100%. If we don't choose all of these, or we choose 6, or some of them, we could even limit the scope. Some of them have 4 items on them, 6 months, and maybe we're only interested in 2 of the questions out of the 4. I think that that would be up to our purview here in terms of our committee. But secondly, anything on this list that we don't choose today, if we meet in a month, it's still there. But in terms of it gets priority, it only gets priority if this committee votes it as priority. If there are other items that come forward that this committee chooses, then they will be selected. It's not a first come, first served basis. It's based on votes.
Senator Petty.
So thanks for that clarification. So in fact, once the proposal is brought before us, we can actually change the scope of it?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's pretty difficult, but technically, yeah. Yeah, messy. Politics is messy. Okay, any other questions for Kirsten? Oh, Kirsten, go ahead.
I might also just mention, if you all are curious, as you go along, depending on what you all decide to do, I have a little schedule that I drafted up, and I will just follow along with your decisions, and I will drag and drop it and tell you if you've reached a point. If you do decide you want to keep going, it's too many. So you guys don't have to worry about that part. I'll flag you down if that's a concern.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Petty. Excuse me? Is there any other questions for Kirsten? Any other discussion before we start making recommendations on proposals? Go ahead, Senator Petty.
So I had raised this point a little bit earlier, and it has to do with the, sorry, I marked it, with its number 6, reviewing the certain CASA and school district policies related to student participation in extracurricular activities. So what concerned me about this request is that this legislation passed in 2023, and it was amended in 2024. And so this post-audit is asking for a review of what's going on legislation that's just passed. So it seems to me to be premature.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on 6L, I believe? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I think it is very relevant. We just had a bill that passed related to this. We also had knowledge and testimony regarding students that were prevented from taking part in certain programs, even they were allowed to participate in the sports, which I think is highly unfair. I think there was also testimony that Keisha was not aware of that. I do think it would be important to go ahead, especially at part 2, that part 1 will be satisfied very quickly, and I don't think would take very much time at all. Part 2, I think it would be a great idea to review. So with that, I make a motion that we accept 6L.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator Peterson, motion by Representative Williams. Now we're open for discussion. Senator Petty.
Well, I appreciate bringing that up. So I guess then we're eliminating number 1 and just looking at number 2. I'm not sure if I understood that recommendation.
No.
Would you like to clarify?
Yeah, no, I wasn't eliminating that. However, I think in terms of the time frame, it could be satisfied, perhaps in a quicker amount of time. That's all I was saying, is that 1 will be satisfied more quickly, 2 will take a little more time.
Thank Thank you for that clarification. This is very much my point. I find it, I mean, I look at some of the other requests for post-audit, and I do find it troubling that when we are moving ahead with audits on legislation that's just been passed, and whether there is actually the ability to show any compliance with that legislation, particularly since it was passed in '23 and then amended in '24. And if I remember correctly, this is '25. So, and the reference to another piece of legislation this year. So that's my biggest concern with 6L.
Is there any other representative, or Senator Holscher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. I share those same concerns. Again, it's really hard to evaluate things when certain aspects have just been put in place. So the timing is a big issue here. So like I said, I do have concerns with this audit.
Is there any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving 6L for an audit signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. 6L is approved. But Vice Chairman Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to look at 5L. In fact, in the Government Efficiency Committee this year, we had some jaw-dropping stats about the number of leases that are open in government buildings, a lot of vacancies. And I think there could be some real consolidation and money savings here if we have our committee take a good look at this. I think it's a good audit, and I would move that we consider 5L for.
We have a motion for 5L by Senator Thompson, a second by Senator Tyson. Is there discussion? Representative Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think this is an excellent audit proposal. My question is, I don't think it would change the scope at all, but the first question, it says, how much office space is owned or leased by the state, and how is that space being used? I'm wondering if that question also incorporates how many employees or what percentage of the square footage or the number of employees based on the number that are supposed to be using the space is being used. So I guess the bottom line I'm trying to get at is, do we have a lot of empty, unused because of remote workers? Somehow that could be incorporated into that question. I don't think it really changes the scope, but gets a little bit more direct.
Okay. I'm just asking, could the clarification be how many square foot is vacant? Or is that not good enough?
I think that gets to it, and I would say I'd be comfortable, well, if the team came up with a way to get us an understanding of, let's say it has a office space with capacity for 30 employees, but only 10 are there, you could kind of look at it that, so maybe either or, but I'd give them that opportunity.
Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that is absolutely the intent, to find out how many buildings are not being utilized and how many remote workers. We found out at the federal level that there was a federal building in Topeka, Kansas, that they had been paying rent on, six-figure rent, and no employees had been reporting to that building. So I definitely think that is part of the intent of this audit.
Senator Thompson, did you have something else?
No, well, other than I agree with Representative Williams and Senator Tyson. I think if we can add to the question, trying to determine how much of it is actually being used as they discussed, I think that would be a good way to refine it and give us better answers. So I would amend my motion.
Staff need any clarification? Representative Tarwater, I almost gave you a senator deal. I'm going to be all
thank God
on this.
So I was wondering if it's asking too much to include in there the leases. We have a lot of long-term leases, both as the lessee and the lessor, and I'd like to know, one of the decisions that you might have to make in your committee is, do we want to get out of these leases, and what would it cost? And so can we make sure we look at the leases and what it would take to get out of them on both sides? We have some long-term tenants that have pretty good deals, that if we could get out of them, that'd be great somehow. And on the other side, we have a lot of long-term leases that we're not having employees come to the building anymore. Can we get out of those, and what would it cost? Just make better decisions.
Does staff have some comments on that? Any concerns?
No concerns. I think we would plan to look at leases, how long they are, that sort of stuff. And I think we could probably pretty easily get at the amount.
Good. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving 5L signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we evaluate 4L.
Okay, there's a motion to evaluate 4L. Is there a second? Second by Senator Tyson. Now we're open for discussion. Senator Peterson.
Mr. Chair, we've seen some of our school districts that had some issues, but they've all responded real well to the post audits and the recommendations that have came. I think it'd be very important in this aspect to do this one.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving 4L signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Holscher.
Thank you. I would move that we evaluate 1L in terms of the evaluating the contributions, distributions, and tax credits. As we have had a program out there, it would be good to get that information as we continually every session seem to discuss expanding these programs. It would be beneficial to have this data.
There's a motion by Senator Holscher for 1L. Is there a second? Second by Senator Petty. Is there any discussion? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can you guys remind us, when was the last time we had an audit on this topic? Because I think it was 1 or 2 years ago. (2022), so 3 years ago. The program, I think the usage amount is probably somewhere between maybe $4 to $6 million annually of tax credits of individual Kansans that donate to student associations. And so this would be probably $132,000 or $120,000 approximately for this audit over monies that are not state general fund monies, and so I would be voting no.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. And what was this particular question in 2022?
Have scholarship granting organizations dispersed tax credit for low-income student scholarship program contributions according to state law?
And did it include how much in tax credits have Kansas taxpayers received and used related to that?
Yes, ma'am. At the time, scholarship granting organizations received over $15.5 million in contributions and had dispersed about $9 million at the time of the audit for the 21 school year.
Thank you. Well, I know earlier when I talked about legislation that had just been passed, we thought it was important not to or to move forward with that. So I would see that this would be just as relevant to move forward with this.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll make a substitute motion to not accept 1L, but review that 2022 audit at some point this year.
Okay, there's been a substitute motion. Is there a second for the substitute motion? Second by Senator Tyson. Senator Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely would, because I think this gives the senator what they're looking for. It gives them a review of the money, and they can couple this with 2024. So I appreciate Representative Tarwater bringing this.
Kristen, did you want to comment?
A point of clarification. So last year, you all approved the audit that would have us follow up on old audit recommendations. So the recommendations from the 2022 audit, there is one of them that we are following up on right now. So it's one of the small audits that we're doing, and then we'll have finished in May.
So it's one of last year's small audits, the same thing that's been asked for in 1L?
Yeah, it's following up on past audit recommendations, of which we had one for the tax credit and tax credit for low-income student scholarship program.
Representative Williams?
I don't believe that was the motion. We can ask the maker of the motion, but I don't believe that was the substitute motion. He was asking to review the 2022 audit, not to follow up on it.
But I think she's saying that it's already scheduled to be followed up on. You see what I'm?
On 14E?
No, 1L is already scheduled as their follow-up from last year. So in essence,
Yeah, so we would just review the 2022 audit at the same time that they bring that follow-up on it.
and I guess the review of the 2022 is part of what your deal is that correct?
When I say review, I just want them to read the audit in as they did in 2022. That, I don't want them to have to go back and look at everything again.
Kirsten?
I'm not sure that I understand what you all are picturing by reviewing the audit that isn't basically us following up on the audit recommendation.
No, just to inform the committee on how that audit turned out.
Just the findings from the audit.
Represent the audit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you could do that as part of your follow-up thing. Also, Representative Nguyen?
Then my concern is that it does not include the updated information. If you review if what's already been printed, essentially, you're not doing any further update or review, correct?
Kirsten?
That's correct. It would just be looking at our recommendation in that audit was KSDE staff should request and analyze monthly contributions and disbursement data needed to monitor student granting organizations' compliance with the scholarship granting organizations' compliance with the 90% distribution requirement in state law. So we would follow up on whether or not they have collected that information and are analyzing it to monitor that.
But it would be at the stop date of that audit, correct?
It would just be what their process is now, but it wouldn't, we would not go back and collect more information to look at updated amounts.
And that's why I would oppose that motion and think that if we did expand it to current, you would actually capture perhaps the spirit of this audit without having to expend much money.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? We have a substitute motion on the floor, and the substitute motion, can anybody repeat it to me so that I don't mess it up?
To include, I believe it was to include a recap or a representation of the 2022 audit findings when we present the follow-up report, which is currently underway, looking at that one recommendation.
And not to do 1L. Okay. All right. Does everybody understand the motion? All those in favor of the substitute, Senator Tyson, did you have a comment? All those in favor of the substitute motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion carries. Senator Tyson.
Thank you. I think you're going to like my motion, 10L. I think that we've heard back and forth on local governments, how we're not funding. And I've asked several times, several governments for a list, and they never can get that list. So I think this is actually underestimated by the amount of effort it might take, but it will give us a good start. So I am making a motion for 10L.
Okay, we have a motion for 10L and second by Senator Tyson. Is there any discussion? I would like to point out, this is one that I brought forward, and the primary reason that I worked with Representative Smith on it is we continue to have the conversation about the treasurer's offices across the state, and they come forward with data. This will be an attempt to have an independent source come up with that cost to the counties. And then also, I believe as part of the scope, they're going to talk with the counties and find their 4 or 5 biggest areas and then try to identify 2 or 3 to get a handle on it. So you're right, it's much bigger than what this is going to take, but at least we'll start to get a grasp on it. Is there any other discussion? Thank you, by the way, Senator. Okay. If not, all those in favor of approving 10L signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we're currently at 4. Senator Thompson. I'm sorry.
Oh, Senator,
Can we let Representative Wynn go?
yes, go
I
ahead.
didn't see her before. I was just looking the wrong way.
That's okay.
That's my,
I'd like to move that we review 811.
I'm sorry.
8L. And since Representative McDonald here, give her the opportunity to speak.
yeah. Representative McDonald, could you just give us a very short?
Before your second, or do we have a second on this?
Oh, yeah. Second by Senator Petty. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Francis, Vice Chair Thompson, and the committee. I really appreciate your consideration today, and I'd like to start by just thanking Ms. Rottinghouse for her huge help. This is new. I'm kind of new at legislating, and so she really held my hand a lot and was very, very patient. This is a program that we gave $2 million to in 2024, another $2 million in 2025. And then when we had it in the committee that year, I questioned what are the regulations here? Because it seemed like a pretty loose, unregulated type bill as far as the criteria for funds expended. So I think it'd be great for us to consider this audit today. We are allocating another $3 million this year in our budget. I'd like to know if this expansion of funding was appropriate or needed, and make sure that we're using our tax dollars to the best fiscally responsible way. I really appreciate Senator Pat Petty partnering with me on this, and I would appreciate any of your consideration on my proposal. I'll stand for questions if you have any, but thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, is there discussion on 10L, or excuse me, 8L? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it quite interesting that the second on this motion was arguing about auditing new programs, and this is a new program. So I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Is there other discussion regarding the motion for 8L? Senator Holscher.
Thank you. Well, it seems like we've kind of gone down that path that we are evaluating newer programs. And we have had, unlike one of these other ones we discussed earlier, we have had no evaluation, I don't believe, of these programs, this in particular. And we're investing $2 million, then $2 million again, and then increase to $3 million of taxpayer funds. So I believe we need to be diligent in this and understanding how exactly these funds are being used. There have been questions that have been brought forward, and this is the perfect way to get some of those answers.
Is there other discussion on 8L? Okay. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get it, and I know we look at things all the time, but as a project manager, which I do for a living, I manage people and projects, it seems exorbitantly high, and maybe post-audit would want to speak to this. 4 people for 4 months, and we didn't even spend that much on when we audited the billions of COVID money that went in. So I just question, maybe the scope of this audit could be pared down, or it seems 4 people, 4 months, that it is exorbitantly high for an audit.
Good government, $172,000 audit for a $2 million project. But you got to watch government waste. Well, the $3 million for next year got vetoed by the governor, so we don't even know if it'll be there. Is there other discussion on the motion? If not, I'm sorry, Senator Hull.
I mean, can we get, is there anything that our staff would like to say in terms of why the time frame is what it is and the requirements?
Kirsten.
Yes, so part of the reason that this one has those requirements is because the process is fairly decentralized. So there is the there's the Kansas Pregnancy Care Network that it's made up of like 25 different entities. So the focus of the audit, in order to address the concern, would have us looking at like a sample of those entities. So we are not expecting that they would use the same systems or have the same processes. So in order for us to look at 5 or 6 of them, that's where the time is coming from.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving item 8L signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. Division's been called. All those in favor signify, or raise your right hand. We have 4. All those opposed, same sign. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion fails 4-5. Senator Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to look at 11L, which is evaluating state fire marshal inspection requirements. And we've heard that some of these requirements are pretty onerous, and it's really negatively impacting some of these homes and even child care facilities. And I believe this is worthy of our consideration.
Okay, we have a motion on 11L. Is there a second? Senator Tyson seconded the motion. Is there discussion? Senator Petty?
So this was one that I know it was brought up earlier about sometimes limiting the scope. And I wondered about number 3, about looking at other states, if that was an important piece of this this post-audit, because it is looking at our residential requirements for both, residential as well as childcare, and then it looks at, and then number 4, local jurisdictions, but it seems like a real expansion of looking at other states. So I'm just, when we talk about scope, I'm wondering if we could eliminate number 3 from this one, and that would provide, it seems to me, what we want to see as far as within our own, what are we doing, and whether it's, if the point is it excessive, that would provide the information with this post-audit.
For discussion, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally agree with Senator Petty, and I think we should eliminate item number 3. It would reduce the scope, and let's just focus on Kansas on this issue. There are times when it's helpful to know what other states are doing. I don't know that this does.
You made that motion, didn't you? Are you all right to amend your motion, or would you?
And sometimes you look at what other states are doing can give you kind of clues about whether or not we're overreaching. That's my only concern there. If the committee feels like it's more important to limit the scope but still be able to get the audit, then I'd be amenable to that.
I hate to weigh in on stuff, but I do kind of agree with you. I think sometimes it's smart for us to see what other people are doing rather than stay within our own circle. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One way we could do this, because that's a pretty big audit on a very specialized item. If we reduced it, let the audit come back, you can always do a limited scope audit on your other question and satisfy the answer after you get some preliminary answer.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question would be for staff, where was because this, I agree with the representative, 4 months, 6 months for people is an extensive audit. And so I would ask, where is the estimate on this project for the portions of it? Could you give us the breakdown? And you may not have that information with you.
Is it one of those things you're going to find in 2 seconds if I'll just shut up, or is it? Okay. Would it be all right if we continue the discussion a little bit while Kirsten's trying to find that? Did you have something, Senator Petty?
No, well, yes, I just think that, I think the first 1, 2, and 4 provides the basic information needed. 3 is really expansion, and when we look at other states, we also find that what, you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples, so that's the other issue.
In committee, I do hate to say this, but we're starting to run into a time issue, I think, with everybody. You've got to go back to the floor. Representative Tarwater.
Thank you. On this particular audit, I have had several meetings with the current fire marshal, and he has identified issues with how this is happening. And the person that was kind of behind most of this is no longer with the fire marshal. We're also passing a bill, hopefully sometime today, that rebuilds the child care structure, and some of this is addressed in that. Maybe we could postpone this to talk about after that bill passes or doesn't pass to the next meeting and get more information from the fire marshal, because this is a rather large audit, but I think
It is.
the problem might be addressed.
I'd be willing to sit on that motion until we can revisit that and see where we go with that bill, I think. If you believe we can amend this situation, yeah.
Okay.
I could just
Withdraw your motion?
withdraw the motion, yeah.
All right. Committee, I hate to do this, but we do currently we've got 4 right now. Is it good with the committee if we go ahead, since people are starting to have to get to caucus for these things? If we, what do we need to do on the state fair audit? How long is that going to take? But then we've got to also approve the consent agenda, and we have to also set the next meeting date. The consent agenda and the next meeting date can wait? I think we're supposed to be back on the floor.
1:30 for caucus for us.
Sean, do you remember what time we're supposed to be back on the floor?
We're in recess until 1 p.m.
No, we're not. It was at least 1:30.
Stand corrected.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop this. We're going to pick up at our next meeting where we are right now, and hopefully we'll have some of those other proposals. Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we information on the fire marshal by then, and that would be great. I appreciate you doing this.
Well, why don't you just save it, because I'll sleep by then and I'll forget. Well, email it to us. Email it to everybody.
And if I may, if we could just have a list of the ones we've approved, that'll help us kind of keep track of what we've got so far.
I think we need to look at a date in early May to meet. And we'll try to set that date up. We'll try to have Chris reach out to people about what their availability is, if that's good for everybody. All right, committee, do we want to go ahead and try to get into executive session for this state fair audit, or do you want it put off until the next meeting? Senator Peterson, I know you're really big into the IT security. It's important to you. You're good with either one? Are you going to be able to attend if we stay in? We're probably adjourning in, and then we're probably going to caucus and go back and do. Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I apologize to the people with the state fair, and we'll try to set up a date in early May and get some of this stuff done. Everybody understand what we're doing and why? Okay. Is there any